Welcome back, everybody. Well, we're here for another video today. And before we get into this video, I have to first thank our sponsor for today's video, and that is API. Thanks to API for sponsoring today's video. And in today's video, we're gonna be using a lot of different products from API to set up this new tank that we are going to be building today. In my last video, we had built out the front porch pond and we had planted it and stocked that pond with some marble mollies. And those things are doing fantastic. But at the same time, when I picked up those marble mollies, I also picked up a ton of white cloud minnows. And today we're gonna be scaping out a white cloud minnow tank for breeding. So you're not gonna wanna miss this. What I need you to do is go ahead and drop a like on this video, drop a comment, let me know what you thought about the last video, and make sure you're subscribed with your notification bell on, and let's get into this video today. Well, before we actually get into the build itself, I wanna talk about some of the hardscape elements we're going to be using today. So number one is we're gonna be using this Sirius stone right here, which will be our mountain type structure. And that's gonna be pretty much built up on this kind of crushed stone substrate right here with some smaller pieces of stone as some accent. And that gray sand is going to be mixed and then gradually change to a more sand in the bottom of the creek bed, if you will. And then we're going to use some red lava rock for backfill, which also provides fantastic harbors for beneficial bacteria. So that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple palette for today, but let's get into this build. Now for filtration, what we're gonna be using is just one of these really cheap internal filters. This thing works pretty well. And what I've done is I've actually modified it. This usually comes out into a spray bar. I've literally just cut that spray bar off and attached a hose just so I can direct kind of where I want the water flow to be. And you'll see why as we get into this build today. Very cheap. I think I paid like $12 for this at PetSmart, and it comes apart pretty easy, so you can actually maintain it as well as you can adjust the flow on it. And then the filter itself, just simply a sponge filter inside of this power head. We have our internal filter placed here. And now what we need to do is just start stacking rock up around it to try to cover it up so you cannot see it. I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. I mean, I'm really kind of digging the way it looks. Now the way I set this up, and I'll actually have to give some credit to MD Fish Tanks because he actually did a very similar scape to this, and I took a lot of inspiration from that video. But I have this filtration back here, and in order to get to it and maintain it, all I have to do is just simply lift this rock off right here. That gives me access to the filter, as well as in the back here, it allows for water flow to still enter the filtration system. Now over here, we're gonna backfill with some red lava rock, and that's just to build up and allow for more structure back here, which will keep these rocks from falling and things of that nature. So we now have that kind of backfilled, and it's really about time where we start adding some of this substrate. Now what I'm gonna use for substrate, like I showed you earlier, is this gray crushed stone. And this stuff matches pretty well with this Sirius stone, which is the reason I'm using it. But what I'm gonna do is just start scooping some of this in here, and then we will get it kind of placed where we need it here in just a moment. Now, let me introduce you to one of my favorite API products to start, and that is this API Safe and Easy Glass Cleaner. And what I love about this stuff is it works both on the inside and the outside. So all I have to do is literally just spray some of this on this paper towel, and come in here and start wiping away the dirt that I just got all over it, and it'll leave a nice crystal clear finish on this glass. All right, so we got all that dirt off now, so all is good. So what I'm gonna do is use my paintbrush and start kind of just getting this pushed into these cracks and crevices a little bit, just to give it a more naturalistic look. So now that I have the base level of substrate in, what I've done is I went and took some of this gray sand as well as some of the pool filter sand and mixed it together. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this back on this side of the tank. And really the purpose of this is to give it the appearance as if the creek bed, if you will, kind of goes out further it slowly gets to a more sandy kind of substrate. So what we're doing is just grading this out from a very light gray to a sandy gray. So we have the substrate in, and I like how it turns from a lighter to the more brown as it gets further out, which looks really good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here with some of these smaller rocks and just get these kind of buried into this substrate a little bit, just to look as if it's kind of fallen off this mountain off into the bed. What we'll do is just kind of use this brush to brush in and just kind of make it more natural. Well, now that we have some of these bigger kind of accent stones in here, we're gonna come in and just drop some of this crushed up Syria stone. Now granted, this stuff has just been washed, so it's darker than what you see. We're just gonna kind of throw this out here and kind of sprinkle it out just a little bit, just to kind of give it a nice little naturalistic kind of look. So now we need to check the pump to make sure we have the right level of water flow. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a different method that I've never used before as far as filling this up with water. And I'm gonna go ahead and take some paper towels and set those down right there in the middle of the tank. So we're gonna go ahead and turn the water off. We'll drain it in just a minute, because before we drain it, we wanna get one last little element in here, and that is going to be a plant. So as we look into this side right here, we're actually gonna place a plant right inside of that rock structure. So this plant is not necessarily native to where these white cloud minnows come from, but this is a tropical plant, and it does like a very saturated root ball. So we're literally just gonna place this plant in the pot right into the water, because it will keep it nice and healthy. Now what we need to do is kind of hide a little bit of that area where the plant sits. We're just gonna use a couple of little stones to kind of hide the pot. So now we need to do one more big water change, get all this water out of here, and then fill this back up, and then treat the water and get this thing ready for some fish. Well, now that we have the water drained, we're gonna go ahead and add a couple of more details to this before we get this filled up one final time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and use some of this Christmas moss that I had purchased some time ago and always wondered what I was gonna do with it. And now I have something to do with it. So we're gonna use this Christmas moss, and we are going to place some of this up in the cracks and crevices of these rocks. We got the moss back in, so now it's just a matter of filling this thing back up with water. So I'm gonna use the same method again with these paper towels, which seems to work. I've never actually used this method before. Well, this tank is finished, and I think it turned out exactly the way I wanted it to turn out. It looks amazing. So as you can see right here, we have some of that Christmas moss sticking out of the rock. We have some more down here sticking out of the rock. We have this really cool ivy plant that's up here with a little bit of a waterfall feature coming out of the side of this mountain. And then as you gradually make your way down the tank, it's very much like a rocky kind of mountain stream type creek bed, which is super cool, and then it kind of just flows out to nothing. So this thing totally looks kind of the way I wanted it to look. Once again, I have to give some credit to MD Fish Tanks for inspiring this build. It is very similar to the build that he did for his white cloud minnows, but this thing looks really, really good. So the only thing that we have left now is we need to go ahead and treat this water that's in this tank and get these fish in here. So we talked earlier about API being the sponsor of today's video, and what we are going to be using in today's video is some of the Stress Coat Plus, which is a water conditioner that will take out all of the chlorine and chloramines and will detoxify the heavy metals. So we're going to use this, and then we are also going to use some API Quick Start, which will allow the addition of fish instantly. Even though we will have some cycled filter media in here, this will help make sure that the bacteria level is high enough where the fish do not die from an ammonia spike or anything of that nature. So let's go ahead and get these chemicals in here, and let's get the fish in too. All right, well, let's go ahead and get this API Stress Coat in here, which will dechlorinate the water. and we will get that completely dechlorinated. So now that we have it dechlorinated, let's go ahead and add some of this quick start. This API quick start is going to allow for the immediate addition of fish. And one little final addition, we're gonna add some of these floating plants, and these are just some big old pieces of frog bit. Not necessarily native to where these white cloud minnows come from, but if they happen to reproduce, we want there to be somewhere for fry to hide, as well as just keeps for a healthy aquarium, having live plants soaking up some of the nitrates. These little white cloud minnows are just living life in here. I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and try to feed them. And what I'm gonna feed them is this fantastic food from API, which is their tropical flakes. In fact, that's what I've been feeding them all along since I got them, and they love it. And as you can tell, they absolutely love these API tropical fish flakes. They go crazy for this stuff. And if you notice, these guys have actually started to get some color into their tails and such. But so far, this tank looks amazing. Well, as I was adding the fish, I started looking and I thought, you know, this bed of this tank looks very desolate. So I really need to build something up down here to kind of tie the mountain at the end of the tank into this wide open space here at the end of the tank. So went ahead and built this up, put a couple of little plants in it, filled it in with some sand, and now let's take a look at the whole thing. Hopefully you went on to like this new white cloud mountain minnow tank. And hopefully we are very successful in breeding these cool little fish. This was a really fun scape to do, and I took a lot of inspiration from MD Fish Tank's white cloud minnow tank in building out this tank, and it was a super easy video to follow along with. So I'm grateful to MD and the videos he creates that helps people like me that's trying to be better at aquascaping actually learn some things. So hopefully you guys learned something from this today as well. And I have to give a big shout out to today's video sponsor, and that is API. So thanks again, API, for sponsoring today's video and providing us with such great products to help keep our fish tanks healthy and clean. So with all of that being said, Little Max Robert has something to say to you guys just real quick.
If you haven't subscribed to the channel or turned the notification bell on, do that now, and you'll drop a like on this video. You can go follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
So make sure you go and do exactly what Little Max Robert said. And with all that, thank you guys. We're truly grateful for all the support, all the views, all the likes, comments, everything, and we will see you next time.